How can one of the greatest talents the National Football League has ever seen have so little to show for it? This is the story of Aaron Rodgers, a genius who, with 4 Most Valuable Player awards and a Super Bowl ring, is haunted by what could have been. Aaron Charles Rodgers was born on December 2, 1983, in the unassuming town of Chico, California, a place far removed from the glamour of big-time sports. Growing up in a modest household, Aaron was the second of 3 boys, raised with traditional values by his parents, Ed and Darla Rodgers. Football ran in his family's blood, with his father, a former offensive lineman at Chico State, becoming one of Aaron's earliest influences. But from the start, Aaron's connection to football was intense and even obsessive. According to his father, by the age of 2, Aaron could sit through an entire National Football League game without flinching, absorbing every play as if it were a masterclass. His journey from that little boy captivated by the screen to one of the National Football League's greatest quarterbacks is a testament to both talent and relentless drive. By age 5, Aaron wasn't just watching football, he was studying it. Most kids his age focused on toys or cartoons, but Aaron's fixation was football strategy. He could dissect plays, memorize formations, and even predict moves with startling accuracy. His father often noted how Aaron's vision of the game extended beyond physical skills, rooted instead in a deep mental understanding of the sport. Aaron's natural instincts, coupled with a keen sense of timing and an intense work ethic, made his path seem almost destined. But for all his potential, there were early signs that his journey to the top would not come easy. In those early years, no one could have imagined the many obstacles that would define his road to greatness. When Rodgers entered high school, his passion for football was already burning bright, but his body didn't seem to keep up with his ambitions. As a freshman at Pleasant Valley High School, he stood at just 5 feet 3 inches and weighed barely over 100 pounds, hardly the build of a future National Football League quarterback. He was repeatedly overlooked due to his size, and though his football intelligence and arm strength were undeniable, scouts and coaches saw him as a long shot. But rather than giving up, Aaron channeled this rejection into motivation. He dedicated hours every day to training, pushing his limits both physically and mentally. Despite his efforts, he watched as his peers received college offers, realizing that his journey would take a different path. For Rodgers, high school became his first real introduction to the sting of being underestimated. By his junior year, Rodgers had grown a few inches, reaching 5 feet 7 inches, still short by football standards, but enough to earn him a starting spot on his high school team. He quickly proved himself a natural leader on the field, displaying a calm and calculated demeanor that impressed his coaches. His quick release, sharp decision-making, and accuracy allowed him to set multiple school records, including single-season passing yards. But despite his on-field success, Division I schools remained unconvinced. In their eyes, he lacked the ideal physical stature of a college quarterback, making him an afterthought for most recruiters. It was a frustrating experience for Rodgers, who began to question if he even had a future in football. Every rejection letter was a painful reminder that talent alone might not be enough. As his high school career drew to a close, Rodgers found himself at a crossroads. Without any Division I offers, he was forced to confront the possibility that his dream of playing college football, and eventually in the National Football League, might never come true. With his strong throwing arm, he briefly considered a future in baseball, where scouts were more focused on his pitch speed than his height. His fastball had topped 93 miles per hour, enough to garner some attention. But baseball wasn't his first love. Football was. Facing disappointment after disappointment, Aaron even considered leaving sports behind altogether, contemplating a future in law. But destiny had other plans for him, and just when it seemed all hope was lost, he received an unexpected call that would change everything. That call came from Butte Community College, a modest junior college just 15 minutes from his hometown of Chico. The head coach at Butte, Craig Rigsby, had heard about Rodgers' skills and saw potential in the young quarterback. Rigsby extended an offer for Aaron to play football there, and although it wasn't the Division I dream he'd hoped for, Rodgers was grateful for the opportunity. At Butte, he found himself surrounded by a group of players who shared his hunger for success. Rodgers thrived under Rigsby's leadership, quickly earning a starting spot and turning heads with his precise throws and uncanny ability to read defenses. For the first time, Rodgers was given a real chance, and he was determined to make the most of it. With Butt's support, Rodgers began to evolve not only as a quarterback but as a leader. That season, he led the Roadrunners to a remarkable 10-1 record, clinching a conference championship and catching the eye of scouts across the state. His statistics were impressive: 2,408 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. But it was his field vision and unshakable poise that set him apart. The once overlooked high school quarterback was now proving himself as one of the best junior college players in California. As Rodgers honed his skills, he grew to 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. The physical stature recruiters had once doubted he'd ever achieve. But even with his newfound success, Aaron had no idea just how far this journey was about to take him. Then, fate intervened once more. Jeff Tedford, the head coach of the University of California, Berkeley, attended one of Butt's games to scout a promising tight end. But as Tedford watched the game unfold, it wasn't the tight end who stole his attention. It was the quarterback who seemed to be operating on an entirely different level. Tedford couldn't believe what he was seeing: a quarterback with the precision, decision-making, and maturity that top programs search for. Without hesitation, Tedford approached Rodgers with an offer to play at Cal. This was the break Rodgers had been waiting for, and he accepted it without a second thought. In a matter of months, Aaron had gone from a frustrated high school graduate with no offers to a Division I quarterback. Transferring to Cal was a dream come true. In his sophomore season, Rodgers quickly took the starting job and never looked back. He shattered records, led Cal to a 10-1 season, and nearly pulled off an upset against the top-ranked University of Southern California. By the end of his junior year, Aaron Rodgers had transformed from a community college afterthought into one of the most tantalizing quarterback prospects in the country. And now, it was time for the National Football League draft. But fate had one more twist waiting for him. Rodgers grew up a die-hard San Francisco 49ers fan. He idolized Joe Montana and Steve Young. And in 2005, the Niners held the first overall pick. They needed a quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers seemed like the perfect fit. It felt like destiny, until it wasn't. When draft day arrived, the 49ers made their decision. They would pass on Rodgers and select Utah's Alex Smith instead. For Aaron, it was a gut punch. Not only was he overlooked by his dream team, but the entire league seemed to follow suit. One by one, teams picked other players. By the time the Green Bay Packers called his name at the 24th pick, Rodgers had been sitting in the green room for hours, cameras capturing every moment of frustration. But if the National Football League saw Rodgers as an afterthought, he was determined to prove them wrong. His journey in Green Bay would begin in the shadow of a living legend, Brett Favre. For 3 long years, Rodgers waited on the sidelines, absorbing everything he could, biding his time as Favre's backup. It was a turbulent period, full of tension and uncertainty. Favre made it clear that he had no intention of mentoring Rodgers, famously saying, "My contract doesn't say I have to get Aaron Rodgers ready to play." Finally, in 2008, Aaron Rodgers' moment arrived, though it came with a whirlwind of drama that foreshadowed his polarizing legacy. Brett Favre, after years as the Packers' beloved quarterback, announced his retirement, only to reverse his decision months later. The Green Bay front office, however, had decided it was time to pass the torch, creating a standoff that would rock the National Football League. Favre was eventually traded to the New York Jets, and the Packers placed their faith in Rodgers, naming him the team's starting quarterback. The decision was controversial, splitting fans and casting an enormous shadow over Rodgers before he had even taken his first official snap as a starter. But Rodgers knew that once he stepped onto that field, it was his time to shine. From his first game as the starting quarterback, it was clear that Green Bay's gamble on Rodgers was about to pay off. Facing their division rival, the Minnesota Vikings, Rodgers showcased the raw talent and poise that had convinced the Packers he was the right successor. His passes were fast, precise, and well-placed, threading through defenders with pinpoint accuracy. In addition to his arm strength, Rodgers displayed a surprising mobility that allowed him to evade pressure and make plays on the run, skills that were rarely seen at such a high level in young quarterbacks. That first victory not only won over some skeptical fans, but it also proved that Rodgers had the poise and skill to lead Green Bay through the turbulent transition from favor to the future. As the 2008 season progressed, Rodgers continued to impress week after week. By the season's end, he had thrown for over 4,000 yards and 28 touchdowns, numbers that made him one of the most productive quarterbacks in the league that year. More impressively, he showed the mental resilience needed to withstand the immense pressure of being Favre's replacement. He faced not only the high expectations of Packers fans, but also the constant comparisons to Favre, whose legacy loomed large in Green Bay. For most young quarterbacks, that kind of pressure would have been unbearable. But for Rodgers, it became fuel, pushing him to prove that he could carve his own path and redefine what it meant to be a Packers quarterback. Over the next few seasons, Rodgers did more than just prove he could handle the job. He set a new standard for what was possible at the quarterback position. His throws were laser-sharp and astonishingly accurate, threading through defenses with almost surgical precision. Week after week, he dazzled fans with passes that landed in impossible spots, often threading the needle between multiple defenders. Analysts began to marvel at his technique, especially his ability to throw accurately even while on the move. Many quarterbacks hesitate when the pocket collapses, but Rodgers was different. He was calm, calculating, and never afraid to take risks, making him one of the most exciting quarterbacks to watch. Then came 2010, a defining year for Rodgers and the Packers. By now, he had solidified himself as an elite quarterback, but a Super Bowl victory was still the ultimate goal. Green Bay made it to the playoffs as a wild card team, which meant a grueling road to the Super Bowl that required them to win 3 straight games on the road. Rodgers was unshaken. He elevated his play to new heights, demolishing opponents with his precise passing and steely focus. Each playoff game brought him closer to the ultimate prize, and as he led his team to victory after victory, it became clear that Rodgers wasn't just a great quarterback. He was a generational talent who had what it took to lead Green Bay back to the pinnacle of football. The pinnacle came in Super Bowl 45, where the Packers faced the Pittsburgh Steelers and their formidable, top-ranked defense. The challenge was immense, as the Steelers' defense was renowned for its hard-hitting style and ability to create turnovers. But Rodgers stepped up, playing perhaps the best game of his career under the brightest lights. He threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, dissecting the Steelers' defense with a level of precision and confidence that left even his critics in awe. The game was a masterclass in quarterback play, showcasing all of Rodgers' strengths: accuracy, poise, and a deep understanding of the game. By the end, there was no question who the most valuable player was. Aaron Rodgers had finally claimed his place among the National Football League's elite. With the Super Bowl victory, Rodgers had officially emerged from Brett Favre's shadow, proving once and for all that he was more than a worthy successor. He wasn't just the new face of the Packers. He was now a Super Bowl champion and the most valuable player of the biggest game of his life. For Rodgers, that moment represented the culmination of years of hard work, perseverance, and self-belief. It was a validation of everything he had fought for, from his struggles in high school and junior college to the skepticism he faced in Green Bay. Now he stood on top, having achieved what every quarterback dreams of: a Super Bowl ring and the respect of the football world. For the Packers and their fans, the victory felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. With Rodgers leading the way, Green Bay seemed poised for a dynasty, a new era of sustained dominance that could rival the achievements of teams like the New England Patriots. Rodgers was at the peak of his powers, and he had a roster filled with young talent, capable coaching, and a supportive fan base. There was every reason to believe that this was only the start of many championships to come. The whispers of dynasty began circulating as fans and analysts alike speculated about how many more titles Rodgers could bring home to Green Bay. Yet, as the years passed, the dynasty that once felt inevitable never materialized. For all of Aaron Rodgers' brilliance and unmatched skill, he and the Packers repeatedly came up short when it mattered most. Game after game, season after season, they'd established themselves as a force in the regular season, only to see it unravel in the postseason. For the fans, it became a cycle of soaring hopes followed by crushing disappointment. Rodgers would put up most valuable player-level performances year in and year out, leading his team with impossible throws. But for reasons both within and beyond his control, it just never seemed to be enough when playoff glory was on the line. In 2011, a season that seemed to solidify the Packers' dominance, Rodgers crafted one of the most remarkable individual campaigns in National Football League history. With a then-record passer rating of 122.5, he threw for 45 touchdowns and led Green Bay to an awe-inspiring 15-1 record. Every week, Rodgers was unstoppable, slicing through defenses with a level of precision and vision that left fans and analysts in awe. He was unanimously awarded the league most valuable player, and the Packers were widely considered the team to beat in the playoffs. But in an abrupt and shocking upset, Green Bay fell to the New York Giants in their first postseason game. As Eli Manning and a surging Giants team exposed the Packers' defense, shattering the dream of a repeat title. This pattern of near misses and bitter disappointments would follow Rodgers for years to come. Each season, Rodgers delivered show-stopping performances, keeping the Packers in Super Bowl contention. There were unforgettable moments like the Motown Miracle in 2015, a stunning 61-yard Hail Mary against the Detroit Lions as time expired, a throw that defied both physics and belief. Plays like this showcased the sheer magic Rodgers could bring to the game. But with each miracle moment, there was also heartbreak. The Packers would fight their way deep into the playoffs, only to be met with bitter losses that extinguished Super Bowl dreams. One of Rodgers' most iconic throws came in the 2016 National Football Conference divisional round against the Dallas Cowboys, a play that encapsulated his legendary skill under pressure. Rolling to his left and throwing across his body, Rodgers unleashed an impossible pass that found Jared Cook on the sideline, setting up a game-winning field goal. That pass became a highlight for the ages, solidifying Rodgers' reputation as a clutch playmaker. But despite this and countless other displays of brilliance, Green Bay would be eliminated yet again before reaching the Super Bowl, leaving fans with questions of what could have been. But no postseason loss felt quite like the agony of the 2014 National Football Conference Championship game against the Seattle Seahawks. With just minutes left on the clock, Rodgers and the Packers led by 12 points. Their ticket to the Super Bowl nearly punched. However, in a devastating turn of events, a missed onside kick recovery and a series of defensive collapses allowed the Seahawks to mount an unlikely comeback. The game slipped into overtime, and before the Packers could blink, it was over. Seattle had seized victory, and with it, Green Bay's Super Bowl hopes evaporated in one of the most painful collapses in National Football League playoff history. In the wake of that loss, the narrative surrounding Rodgers began to shift. For fans and analysts alike, the question arose: why couldn't the Packers get over the hump? Was it simply bad luck or a lack of a strong supporting cast? Or was it something within Rodgers himself, some intangible quality that prevented him from consistently winning in high-pressure games? As brilliant as he was, Rodgers' postseason shortcomings began to cast a shadow over his legacy, leaving even his most ardent supporters frustrated and longing for more. Rodgers, to his credit, seemed unshaken on the surface, always ready to come back with another stellar season, another most valuable player-worthy performance. But behind the calm exterior, the frustration was clear. Time and again, he voiced concerns over roster moves and coaching decisions, hinting at a deeper disconnect with the organization that had drafted him. While Rodgers continued to break records and rack up accolades, there was a growing sense that his relationship with the Packers was slowly fraying. Each season without a Super Bowl only seemed to intensify that tension. By the end of the 2010s, it was hard to ignore the reality. Despite Rodgers' once-in-a-generation talent, his legacy was haunted by missed opportunities and what-ifs. In the eyes of many, he had the skill to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Yet without more rings to his name, He seemed destined to be remembered as a player who dazzled but rarely conquered. For Rodgers, the frustration grew as the Super Bowl window appeared to narrow. And as the years slipped by, his quest for another title became not just a professional goal, but a deeply personal mission to prove, once and for all, that he could deliver when it mattered most. As the seasons wore on, each playoff defeat seemed to chip away at the once bright aura surrounding Aaron Rodgers' career. By his mid-30s, Rodgers was unquestionably one of the National Football League's all-time greats, with a Super Bowl ring and 2 most valuable player titles cementing his legacy. But each bitter playoff exit began to cast a long shadow over his resume. That single Super Bowl win, which had once promised to be the start of something greater, now looked more and more like a lone peak in a mountain range of missed opportunities. The burden of unmet expectations was growing heavier, and Rodgers, despite his unrelenting talent, found himself inching closer to the unenviable label of one-ring wonder. In 2019, after 2 straight losing seasons and nearly a decade of frustration with head coach Mike McCarthy, the Packers took a bold step. They hired a young, offensive-minded head coach named Matt LaFleur. LaFleur's arrival brought a fresh energy to Green Bay and a much-needed change in offensive philosophy. Under this new regime, Rodgers seemed reinvigorated, once again resembling the quarterback fans had long revered. That season, Rodgers led the Packers to an impressive 13-3 record, reminding everyone why he was a future Hall of Famer. For the first time in years, Green Bay seemed like a true contender, capable of making a deep run. The 2019 playoffs gave the Packers faithful reason to believe again. With Rodgers at the helm and LaFleur orchestrating a dynamic offense, Green Bay won its way to the National Football Conference championship game. Their opponent was a formidable San Francisco 49ers team, armed with an intimidating defense and a punishing ground game. This was a chance for Rodgers to silence the doubters and reclaim his place at the pinnacle of the National Football League. But the game turned into a nightmare as the 49ers exploited every flaw in the Packers' defense, running the ball at will and stifling Rodgers. Despite a season of excellence, Green Bay's Super Bowl dreams were shattered, and Rodgers found himself heading home empty-handed yet again. Determined to rebound, Rodgers came back stronger than ever in 2020. At 37 years old, a time when most quarterbacks are slowing down, Rodgers defied Father Time with a season that was nothing short of miraculous. He threw a career-high 48 touchdown passes, boasting pinpoint accuracy and poise that showcased the full range of his talents. The season was capped off with his 3rd most valuable player award, a testament to his enduring greatness and a clear message that he wasn't done yet. The Packers once again finished 13-3 and secured the National Football Conference's top seed, putting them one step closer to the Super Bowl. For Rodgers, this was more than just a playoff run. It was a chance to rewrite his legacy. The 2020 National Football Conference Championship game became a high-stakes showdown between Rodgers and Tom Brady, who had recently joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With home field advantage in snowy Lambeau Field, this was a golden opportunity for Rodgers. It was a game packed with storylines, a battle between 2 legendary quarterbacks, Rodgers versus Brady, and the chance for Rodgers to prove he could still win on the biggest stage. The stakes had never been higher, and for Packers fans, it felt like destiny was finally on their side. Yet, despite all the promise, fate had other plans. Although Rodgers outplayed Brady on the stat sheet, the Packers faltered at critical moments. Several missed chances plagued the game, including dropped passes and defensive lapses that allowed Tampa Bay to stay ahead. Then came the most controversial moment, facing 4th and goal late in the game. The Packers coaching staff opted to kick a field goal rather than going for the touchdown. The decision was widely criticized, and it ultimately sealed their fate. Green Bay never got the ball back, and once again, Rodgers was forced to watch as his Super Bowl hopes slipped away. Walking off the field that night, Rodgers had to reckon with a painful statistic. He was now 1-4 in National Football Conference championship games. For a quarterback of his caliber, that record was a glaring blemish on an otherwise pristine career. Every great quarterback has their fair share of postseason heartbreak, but for Rodgers, These losses were becoming a defining part of his story. That night in Lambeau, the weight of his playoff struggles seemed almost tangible, a heavy burden that each failed season made harder to ignore. With each passing year, the narrative around Aaron Rodgers grew increasingly complex. He was one of the most talented and intelligent quarterbacks the National Football League had ever seen. Yet his postseason resume was an undeniable mark against him. For his fans, it was both frustrating and confounding. How could a player so gifted fall short so often in the playoffs? Some blamed bad luck, others pointed to a lack of support from his coaches and teammates. But whatever the cause, the result was the same. Rodgers, a quarterback capable of magical moments, was haunted by an inability to capture a second ring. As he entered his late 30s, Rodgers' legacy as a player was secure. No one could deny his place among the greatest to ever play the game. But the shadow of postseason disappointments loomed large, threatening to redefine him as a quarterback who, despite all his accolades, never quite reached the heights his talent deserved. And as Rodgers watched younger quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes ascend, the question became unavoidable. Would he ever get another shot? Or was his legacy doomed to be that of a one-ring wonder? For Rodgers, the frustration was palpable. He had proven time and again that he could carry his team through the toughest moments and deliver highlight reel performances on demand. But football, more than any other sport, is a game of inches, and Rodgers had seen too many inches go the wrong way. As the 2021 season loomed, he found himself at a crossroads. Would he remain with Green Bay and continue to chase the elusive Super Bowl? Or would he seek a fresh start, hoping that a new chapter might change his fortune in the twilight of his career? Then, in 2021, Rodgers' legacy took a new turn, this time off the field. As the COVID-19 pandemic upended the world, Rodgers found himself at the center of controversy. He had previously told reporters he was immunized, but it later came to light that Rodgers hadn't been vaccinated. When he contracted COVID, the fallout was immediate and intense. Rodgers publicly questioned the vaccine, faced backlash for spreading misinformation, and became a divisive figure almost overnight. This off-field drama chipped away at the image he'd built over years. Rodgers, once a beloved superstar known for his intelligence and charm, was now at odds with much of the public and even some of his own fan base. Brands pulled their endorsements, and the media backlash was fierce. For the first time in his career, Rodgers was being judged not only for his performance on the field, but for his actions off it. Yet even in the face of controversy, Rodgers continued to deliver on the field. In 2021, he won his fourth Most Valuable Player award, becoming only the second player in history to win the award back-to-back at 38 years old. The numbers were undeniable. His arm strength, accuracy, and decision-making were as sharp as ever. But when the playoffs came, the story was all too familiar. Green Bay fell short, this time to the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional round, mustering only 10 points. It was yet another postseason exit that left fans wondering if Rodgers would ever reach the Super Bowl again. As Rodgers entered the 2022 season, his future with the Packers was uncertain. He had already hinted at retirement, flirted with the idea of joining another team, and even embarked on a darkness retreat to search for clarity. At 39, he faced a decision: retire with his legacy intact, take a shot with a new team, or continue with the Packers despite an uncertain future. Ultimately, in 2023, Rodgers made his choice. After 18 seasons in Green Bay, he decided to leave the team that had defined his career. Signing with the New York Jets, it was a bold move, one that echoed the path of his predecessor, Brett Favre, who had also ended his career in New York. Once again, Rodgers found himself with a new team, a new challenge, and a fresh opportunity to add another chapter to his story. But even as he moved forward, Rodgers' legacy remained a topic of endless debate. To some, he was a tortured genius, one of the most talented quarterbacks the game had ever seen, held back by bad luck and a lack of support. To others, he was an enigma, a player whose brilliance was overshadowed by inconsistency, both on and off the field. In the end, whether he ever wins another Super Bowl or not, Aaron Rodgers will go down as one of the most unforgettable players in National Football League history. From his laser-sharp throws to his playoff heartbreaks, from his iconic Most Valuable Player seasons to the controversies that clouded his later years, Rodgers' career is a testament to the highs and lows of professional sports. He has shown us both the glory and the agony that comes with being a legend. So as Rodgers steps onto a new field in New York, one question remains. Will he finally silence the doubters? Or will his story end as it began, brilliant, but somehow incomplete? Only time will tell.